A longtime reader and first-time poster. This might not be written in the best grammar, so please forgive me. This story takes place back in April of 2018. I live on Long Island and I was in my freshman year of high school. I was going through a tough time. Earlier in the week, my girlfriend had broke up with me because of rumors she had heard about me, which I won't share here. There was a lot of drama going around my life at this point. Depression, broken hearts, typical high school BS. My mom knew that I was down in the dumps, so one night, she took me to get a new phone in the nearby mall. We were gone for about an hour, and we returned home with my dog greeting us. And let me tell you something about my dog. He's a short, stocky golden retriever who's never violent or vicious in any way. This is important for later. My dad was still at work, so it was my duty to take out the trash. I went through the front door with my dog resting on the porch, and went to the side of my house to throw out the trash. When I was throwing the bag, I look over to my neighbor's house where I saw a guy dressed in all black around 6 foot, walking out of their side door. Being a paranoid 14-year-old, I had so many red flags going off. Let me tell you something about my neighbors and my neighborhood. I live in a safe neighborhood, but not 15 minutes away from walking distance. We live by a town that has a high crime rate, ranging from muggings to drug dealing, and even murders from time to time. My neighbors, on the other hand, have an older stepson who drag races in that part of town. So, for some stupid reason, I wasn't in the fight or flight mode yet because I was assuming it could be one of his friends. It's stupid of me, I know. Until there was another man and then another. There were 6 guys dressed in all black coming out of the house and from the backyard. And then I knew what was going on, so I tried walking away as I saw nothing. When I was on my driveway, I saw 2 of the 6 guys slowly moving toward me. My blood went cold within a second as they were getting close. My dog went running off the porch, chasing these 6 men down the street into the night. My dog came back and was still standing in my driveway trying to process what I just saw. I went back inside with my mom asking me what had just happened. I told her what I just saw, with the 6 men coming out of the neighbor's house and heading towards me. We called the police and they came over to ask me questions. I described the men as best as I could. The police told us we're not the first to experience this, as there were 7 burglaries all over town at the time, and I probably witnessed them attempting to break in. I told the officers about 2 out of these 6 guys walking toward me after I saw them. They told me that, since I saw them, they were trying to stop a possible witness. That was basically a friendly way of them saying that the burglars were going to kill me since I saw what they were doing. As typical as this could get, the best they could do was a police report. I was always afraid of break-ins, but I never thought I would experience one. To this day, I'm still surprised at how my harmless golden retriever saved my life that night, and showed me that no matter where you are in this world, this could happen anywhere. 4 years have gone by, my family now has a gun, and I'm currently training in kickboxing for self-defense. To the 6 men who tried to break into my neighbors, I hope I don't see you again. Over the summer, I took a long solo trip to China. I was staying in the capital, which was super tourist friendly, so I was really comfortable getting about on my own, sightseeing, etc. One day, I was heading somewhere. I can't quite remember where anymore. And I came across this amazing huge park. It had a little river running through it and loads of flowers and trees. It was honestly huge. One little place near the back had actual playground equipment, like monkey bars and seesaws and stuff. In China, most parks had workout equipment too, and there were a bunch of old people working out while their grandkids were playing around. I tried using one piece of equipment as I thought it was confident in what it did and how to use it. I was not. I sat there so confused, and an old woman saw this and sat in the exact same one to my right, and started demonstrating how to use it because she couldn't explain it to me in English. It was the cutest thing. The whole park was a very cute and wholesome place, or so I thought. I loved the park so much that I decided to go back just before I left. The rest of the park was very beautiful, but I loved the little playground part, so I headed straight there. The first time I was there, it was quite empty, which I liked, but this time it was very, very crowded. I decided to not hang about as most of the equipment was already taken, so I just walked straight through. As I was walking through, I felt a pair of eyes on me, so naturally, I turned my head in that direction. There was a guy a couple of feet from me just watching me as I was walking out of the park. He looked to be in his early 20s and harmless. Again, I was wrong. I ignored the gaze, turned back around and kept walking. The whole surrounding area was pretty empty due to how enormous this park was. So, there was no one around, but I could hear footsteps behind me. I didn't turn around to check, but instead, I just quickened my pace as I had a bad feeling about being in this deserted area. When I heard hello, which could have only been directed at me, because there was no one else around, I turned around and saw the guy from the park. I was in no mood to try to entertain this guy who was following me, so I turned back around and started walking even faster, and towards where I knew there would be other people. And then I hear him start running. He catches up to me and starts speaking in Chinese. Of course, I can't understand him, and I speak next to no Chinese, so I tell him in English, I don't understand you. He keeps saying something over and over in which I couldn't understand, so I just started to try and walk away from him. But he grabs my arm really hard to try to keep me there. I looked at him with a facial expression to say, what the heck are you doing? And I yank my arm away. I'm practically running away from him now when he grabs my backpack and pulls me back. Just then, a family came into view, and as soon as the people appeared, he let go of me. I ran straight past the family and kept going until I found a bench to sit on to pull myself together. I made sure that there were other people nearby and that he wasn't following me anymore. I then pulled out Google Translate to try to figure out what the phrase he was kept saying to me over and over. I don't think I'll ever forget it or the expression on his face. It turns out that he was telling me, "It's okay," over and over while trying to attack me. I have no idea what would have happened if that family didn't appear, and I'm so glad I didn't find out. This year, my favorite cousin was getting married in Canada. My trip involved a layover in China where I was provided hotel and accommodation. At this point in the year, it was super hot in China. The problem was the AC wasn't working, along with all the electronics. I called the front desk to tell them of this problem, and one of their employees was sent up to try and fix the problem, but to no avail. After 30 minutes, I told him it's fine and I just wanted him to go because I had been exhausted from all the traveling and the lack of sleep. Fast forward to some point in the night, I woke up, which isn't that uncommon for me, but I heard something. In my dazed state, I saw someone at the end of my bed sitting. At first, I thought it was my cousin, and I told him that he could sleep on the couch, but then it hit me. At the end of my bed was that same man who was sent up to fix the power in my room. He was just sitting and undressing himself. At first, I couldn't say or do anything. I just thought in my head, this is what happens to solo travelers, and I prepared myself for the worst, but then I thought, screw this, and I screamed my heart out. The man got startled and ran away. I ran up to lock the doors but thought it was pointless since this guy probably had a key and could get back into my room anyway. I ended up spending the rest of the night awake, just staring at the door. When morning hit, I tried to tell the front desk about it, but there was a huge language barrier, plus my crying didn't really help. And then I noticed the guy who was in my room in the background. and I started shouting and pointing at him. They still couldn't really understand, and in the end, all they could tell me was sorry, and that he was drunk and thought it was his room. The weekend after my 24th birthday in February this year, I went on a blind date that ended atrociously, as the person I met smelled like a skunk and was a liar. That's not the scary part though. I bought a ticket for my date and myself, but the movie didn't start for another 45 minutes, so I just waited in the theater lobby and hoped that she would show up. I was on the far left corner of a bench when a large burly man walked up to it and sat directly next to me. "Hey," he said. As a slightly awkward guy, I sheepishly said, "Hi." The man smiled, opened up his coat, reached in, and pulled out a package of salami. "This is the best salami. You want to buy some?" he asked. "Oh, no thanks, I'm full," I said. He raised his eyebrows and put the salami back in his coat. In the same movement, however, he pulled out a package of cheese. "And this cheese? You want to buy some freaking pepper jack?" He leaned in towards me with this question. No, I'm afraid not." He sighed, put the cheese back in his coat, and zipped it up. The man was silent for the next 5 minutes, but my heart was pounding from being uncomfortable. The man finally relented and nudged me. He pointed at the poster for Mockingjay. "That's a nice logo, isn't it?" he smirked. I looked at the poster. "It is pretty cool, isn't it?" I forced myself to say. "I'm a tattoo artist, and I gotta put it on someone. Maybe you. Yeah, I would love to ink your canvas. I mean, you're well built. One could do wonders with your skin." I went wide-eyed in dismay at how creepy this guy was. I couldn't even respond at this point. "I'm also a musician. I bet you have great vocal cords. I would love to audition you." He smiled at me. Maybe another time, man. I'm meeting my date any second now," I said. "Oh, is she hot?" he said with his tone deeper and more serious. "I don't know. We'll see." "Well, lucky her," he said. He reached out and stroked my hairline and ran his finger through my admittedly long hair. Lucky her. I sprang to my feet and stomped out of the theater. "Oh, come on, man, you can't just leave me like..." He shouted after me when a theater usher stomped up to him and yelled at him to leave. After about 3 minutes, I re-entered the theater and the creep was nowhere to be seen. I can handle myself, but I felt violated by the whole incident. So, this took place about 2 years ago. A bit of an introduction to me. I've been having some health issues the past few years. Around the beginning of my health getting bad, I went to the hospital for the first time. Earlier that day, I was sitting in a lecture trying to focus on the content, and I started having a nasty headache and my vision began to fade. I started getting nervous about it because it got to a point where I couldn't see anything anymore, and I started getting nauseous. Now, I later found out that it was a really bad migraine, but I had never had one before, and my family didn't have a history of migraines, so I was really worried about losing my vision. After my sight came back, I was messaging one of my friends, telling her about my concerns. She told me that she would drive me to the hospital if I needed a ride. I was extremely grateful to her, since it was around midterms and we were both really busy. I took her up on that offer, and we ended up going to the hospital after my lecture was over. We went inside the hospital and I was triaged. Now, for those of you not familiar with the Canadian healthcare system, we often have really long waiting times. I figured we would be there for a while, so we decided to hunker down in a set of chairs a bit away from the main waiting area, as there were none available in the waiting area. A few hours passed and we were just chilling on our phones and talking. The nurse wheels out a man in a wheelchair, covered with a blanket, and sits him on the wall opposite of us. I briefly look up to see him staring at us, but I didn't really pay any mind. Eventually, he strikes up a conversation asking about us. Again, no red flags, so we make friendly conversation. The conversation fades and he rolls away. But then he comes back and starts staring again. I start to get uncomfortable and I text my friend. I look over at him and this dude has his hand under his blanket doing you know what. I also notice part of his leg wasn't covered with the blanket and his pants were slightly lowered. He starts to make grunting noises and I freeze. I want to laugh because I'm so uncomfortable. I text my friend and tell her and she just says to ignore it. She also looks uncomfortable as well. A few emergency personnel walk by, but don't really notice. I'm too scared to say anything, because what if he actually just injured and is trying to shield wherever his injury is? So eventually, there is a louder groan and then he goes quiet. He continues to stare at us for a good 30 minutes or so, before a nurse comes and brings him to another room. This was by far the most uncomfortable hospital experience I've ever had. So, guy in the wheelchair with the blanket yanking one off in the hospital. I really hope we never meet again. So, back in November 2020, I was in and out of hospital with testicular torsion 8 times altogether. Because why permanently fix the issue when you can temporarily fix it, I guess? And on my last time at one of the hospitals, I had called a taxi to go home. But it would take about 30 to 40 minutes to get to me because it was a Saturday in the city. Since there was going to be a bit of a wait, I decided to sit down in a bench garden area just in front of the hospital. It was 3 a.m., about 0 degrees Celsius, and I had been awake for about 36 hours at that point. My taxi was on its way and I just sat cross-legged on the bench, headphones on and nicotine keeping me alive. Everything was all fine until after 10 minutes I noticed a guy very clearly walking directly towards me. He was stumbling a little bit, so I assumed he was drunk. As he got on level with me, he stopped right in front of me and said something that I didn't hear. I looked up and said, "What? Sorry I had music on," as I pulled them off. And he looked me dead in the eye and just said, "I could batter you right now." Of everything I was expecting him to say, that wasn't on the list. So, caught off guard, I tried just disarming him with humor by saying, "I don't doubt it." Which did work, thank God, because he would have absolutely pummeled me to the ground. And every time I said that or something similar, he would just say, "I could batter you. I want to deck you right here, right now. And I could take you in a fight." Just to recall a few of them. After his anger had toned down, he sat on the bench next to me and started generally drunk rambling about his family and his friends, and very specifically, his best friend's girlfriend that he was having an affair with. And then he pointed out my shoes saying, "Those are nice, mate. Can I have them?" Obviously, I said no, firmly but not aggressively, and then said thanks and told him about the fact that I got them on sale. He said, "Can I touch them?" Which was immediately a big red flag. I politely declined and he started rubbing my shoes anyway. I was still sitting cross-legged on the bench. And then in one swift movement, he grabbed my ankle, pulled my entire leg up to his face, and put his entire nose of my size 11 Converses in his mouth. At which point, while sitting in stunned silence, I started desperately looking around, and I see the hospital police walking over. The officer asked if we were here together and he said yes and I said no. The officer then asked if he was a patient and I said yes and he said no. I told the officer I was just waiting for my taxi and the guy rambled something that I couldn't really make out to the officer, who suggested that he move along. The guy stood up, gave me a handshake and walked off into the night. That officer obviously asked if I was okay and I told him what happened, and he was just as confused as I was. After that, my taxi was due in 5 minutes, so I went and stood on the opposite side of the hospital where the taxi rank was.